Hey, Tiki, how you doing?
Hey, Maggie. What's up, Moose?
What's up, Teak?
All's good.
Listen, we can look at, Andrew Thomas and, CJ Board also put on IR, but we can look at, Andrew Thomas and just, lament kind of what could have been, Tiki, for this offensive line. But to me, it's how do you evaluate Daniel Jones accurately if you now have a third person who's going to be down with injury on this offensive line, and not to mention it was your best offensive lineman in your left tackle?
Yeah, it's really hard, Maggie. You got a little bit of a sample earlier in the season when he started to play really well. We saw him not making many mistakes at all, not turning the football over. They needed him to be a difference maker, an athlete or a passer. He was able to do those things, and you felt encouraged, even though they were losing. You felt encouraged that maybe we have our quarterback of the future here in New York, and now it all goes down the drain with these two last blowouts of the Dallas Cowboys and the Rams. And I'm not putting it on Daniel Jones, but when you give him so much praise after those couple of weeks, and then it not just like gets a little bit of a downturn, it like flips on its head in a lot of ways. It's frustrating, and the evaluation gets stunted. I don't know what the ultimate call is going to be, and especially if there are going to be more changes around this team. I like Daniel Jones. I'm biased simply because I like him as a person and as an individual, and I've seen some growth this year, but it's hard when he's got 2.5 seconds to throw the football, and he's unaware on blind sides because you have a new tackle in when Pert goes over there with Andrew Thomas going down, and you get strip sacks, and this game just gets out of hand. It's one of the most confounding and difficult, I think, situations in football right now is what to do with this Giants team.
Okay, just one more on Jones here, Tiki, before big picture. You look at Thomas and the way that it's going to look the rest of the way. If I were to ask you, Tiki, one way or the other, you take over, you're running the Giants after this season from a player personnel perspective, do you look at Daniel Jones as being the answer at quarterback?
I think he's the answer right now for the New York Giants, and here's why.
Do you think he's the answer 5 years from now?
That's to be determined. But here's what matters when a team is in a straight like the Giants are right now. You have to start back to the core, right? Build a great offensive line, get a good defense so that you have, the ability to get off the field. But you can't go spend resources on a quarterback who's not ready yet. You know what I mean? And whoever they bring in, he's not going to be ready because all these quarterbacks are young and they're developing. Sometimes you get lucky like the Justin Herberts of the world, or you get a unique system like Kyler Murray is running or Lamar Jackson are running. But that's specific to their skill set, their unique skill sets. But for the most part, for these quarterbacks, it takes time to develop in the NFL. And if you don't have the right pieces around them, so you put that young quarterback in a bad situation, you're doing him no favors. And so for me, the Daniel Jones is the right now. Long term, it's going to be determined what they put around him, especially up front.
Tiki, listen, and I don't want to put the cart before the horse here, but this is what happens when you have a 1-5 football team and they've just gotten blown out in their last two games. Does it add to the urgency at all to figure out what you have with Jones and to make a decision on him if A, Dave Gettleman is not here next year, and B, you have that second first-round pick because you traded back in this year's draft? Yeah,
but you're not going to take a quarterback next year. I know that there are some guys that are coming out. Who is it? The only one first-round draft eligible quarterback this year was Spencer Rattler, and he's gone to crap. He's not even starting anymore. Caleb Williams is starting at Oklahoma right now. You're going to tell me Malik Willis at Liberty, who maybe 5 people have seen play, that he's your answer? He's
no, we'll hype somebody up though.
Right. This feels like an EJ Manuel year. If you know what I'm getting at.
Yep.
That's what this.
Thank
feels
you for
like.
Bringing up that proud moment in Bill's history.
My bad. They had to take a quarterback, so let's take EJ Manuel. He's the best one available. He clearly was a second or third round pick.
Definitely.
Right. It should have been, and so it feels like that's this kind of year. But there are a bunch of good skill position players or linemen that are going to come, defensive linemen that are going to come into this draft. Look at Georgia. Just pick one on Georgia, right? That's what they're unbelievable. But that's what this year feels like to me. If you are one of those teams picking at the top, find the best core player that you can and draft that person. Don't go waste it on a quarterback just because everybody's screaming, well, we don't have our quarterback, we need a new one.
Tiki, when you look at Judge then, then we were talking about how do you evaluate Jones, right? How do you evaluate this team? What about, the coach? I mean, Bill Parcells used to always say, about injuries, nobody cares, right? In the National Football League, right? Nobody cares about injuries. So then we know what this team doesn't have. So when you look at Judge year 2, some of the rhetoric is kind of becoming very people are making fun of him for it.
Yeah.
It's becoming nonsensical. How do you look at Joe Judge and grade him out the rest of this way?
Well, he said something earlier, and we talked about it a few weeks ago in the season, like how I got to tell these guys the truth. And I hope that he's still doing it. And what he needs to tell them is that you guys stink right now, right? That you guys are you're out of position. You're not playing with a high IQ. I mean, the day that Julian Love had last week, it was embarrassingly bad. Whether he was cutting off his own guy or getting cut off or getting blocked out of the way to make a big play that allowed a big play to happen for the Rams, right? It shows a lack of awareness and IQ, football IQ, and really that's what I care about. I want to see smart football plays being made, and that comes down to teaching and coaching. And that's where Judge starts to get some criticism. And it's not all him. I mean, he's not coaching the defensive secondary, but it does trickle down to Patrick Graham, the defensive coordinator. It trickles down to the offensive line coach and the DB coach and all these other levels. That's where it falls on Coach Judge to get that side right. At the very least, you don't want to see incompetence. And at some points in a lot of these last couple of games, that's what we've seen. And it's frustrating. I mean, if you get beat by a better player, that just is what it is, man. The guy's better than you. Work yourself, get yourself better prepared and work on it. But if you're making mistakes and the same ones over and over and over and over and over again, or it's too complicated for you, that's when I started to look at coaching.
Yeah, and listen, that was one thing Judge preached when he came in. We're going to teach, we're going to do things the right way, and they haven't, and they don't have any answers for it, which is kind of alarming. And I heard Dan Orlovsky, who had this, and it was funny, and it made the rounds, where he said that about Joe Judge, and this was with regards to leaving Daniel Jones in the game during the blowout. Nobody needs a Timmy Toughnuts. Did you have a problem with Daniel Jones when players are getting injured left and right? Jones is coming off the concussion, that he would be in there with an offensive line that's got Parrott on one side and Corey Cunningham on the other, and Jones was still out there taking hits.
Yeah, no, I didn't mind that as much as other people did. I mean, I know we want to protect our quarterbacks, but I would promise you that Daniel Jones, and I haven't heard him say this, he probably wanted to stay in the game. Right? Some of those bad moments are when you learn the most about yourself and those guys around you. And you're going to find out who really wants it and who's going to quit and lay down their sword. And so I didn't mind it. I don't think he was in danger of hurting himself. I mean, the Dallas concussion, that was freak, right? He got hit with his head turned and then he hit the ground with his head turned. That's why he got concussed. He's not going to be in that position very often. So I didn't mind it as much as some other people did. I know what they're saying because what's the point? But Daniel Jones still needs work. He knows he needs work, and so I didn't mind it.
Tiki, when you look at the Jets here, after a bye week, they get themselves back in action. Saleh talking about the fact of working on the offense, the poor starts that we've seen in the first quarter for this team, putting themselves behind the 8 ball. What was the biggest things when you look at this Jet team, what we saw here at the start of the year, coming off the bye now, what's the biggest thing that you want to see first game out of the bye?
Well, I mean, I said this because I did the first game of the season. You guys remember against the Carolina Panthers, and I said it then, and I'm still saying it. Simplify things, and I know that Mike LaFleur, who is young and he's trying to figure this thing out, is still finding his way as a play caller. But I also think you need to make things easy. At times, it's going to get frenetic, and you're going to have to trust Zach Wilson to go make a play, like we saw in the game, against the Tennessee Titans that they surprisingly won. But for the most part, keep it simple, right? Sometimes I think we want to get ahead of ourselves with young players, and this Jets team offensively, has some young players on it. Keep it as simple, and it's not about winning per se. It's about creating a confidence in execution. And so the roller coaster that they've been riding over these last couple of weeks is tough. Now, playing in London it's difficult, right? You're flying across the ocean. You got a week of whatever the heck it is you do over there for a week, and then you go play a game and it's early, or it's really late. I mean, it's just weird, right? So I can understand why that blowout happened. We need to see them back like they were against the Tennessee Titans, where they competed and they didn't make mistakes, and not like we saw them against the Atlanta Falcons. So the most important thing I need to see from Coach Saleh is consistency and simplicity from a coaching staff.
Yeah, and you had that first game where the Jets played the Panthers, and obviously Sam Darnold looked good in that game, and then he looked good in the next game, and in the last 3 games he hasn't looked as good. And Christian McCaffrey being placed on IR, I'm sure had a big to do with it. Obviously the Panthers are coming to play the New York Giants. Is Sam Darnold able, what have you seen in him in the last 3 weeks? Is he capable of elevating this team with their best player out?
Well, here's the reality of that early start for Sam Darnold, where he just looked amazing. We joke about it and we say, it's easy when you have Christian McCaffrey. It really is, right? Because you design plays for him. He's one of the most dynamic slashing runners that you've ever seen, right? He sees a hole and he's through it, and he's got 6 yards, and then he breaks a tackle, and next thing you know, he's got 15. Or you got a play that's designed to break down field for 15 yards, and DJ Moore running a dig, and it gets picked up. Well, there's Christian McCaffrey. I'm just going to drop it to him for 2 yards. He goes for 15, right? He changes the complexion of how a defense can defend you, and without him, Sam Darnold doesn't have that security blanket. It's like a cliche, but he doesn't have that security blanket. Now, Chuba Hubbard had a pretty good game in his stead last week, but he's not. It's not the same, right? There's not that threat of this kid can go the distance every time he touches the ball. And I think that's why we've seen the regression. You see, what I've seen is Sam now holding the football like we saw when he was with the Jets, actually waiting for something to develop, right? I got this play called. Chuba's there, but he's not Chris McCaffrey. I'm going to wait and wait and wait, and he gets sacked. He fumbles, and has become very, very inefficient these last couple of weeks. It's a shame too, because I don't know how healthy Chris McCaffrey is ever going to be again. He keeps getting these soft tissue injuries that I don't know what they're telling me, but it's telling me that something's not right with how he's been training or how he's recovered from the injuries that he's had.
Tiki, last one for me on the Giants, and that is kind of on the whole about where this organization is right now.
Yeah.
As it looks like it's going to get really, really, and it's ugly now, but even uglier as we move along record-wise. What do you think is on the table realistically? As you hear Giant fans, where it's Gettleman and Judge, it's cleaning the house, it's staring it all down. What do you think realistically is on the table now for the Giants?
Well, I don't think you can be reactionary like that. Now, it's been horrible. 2 consecutive 1-5 starts. I mean, over the last 5 years, it's the worst franchise in the NFL. Think about that. There's been some bad teams in the NFL. And if it wasn't for the Jets not playing, I think they would be right with us. So I think changes need to happen, clearly. And but you can't be visceral about it, right? You can't let your emotions get in the way of prudence. And so smartly looking at what is working well, right? All right, Daniel Jones has developed pretty well when there's protection around him. This offensive line, there hasn't been a lot of progression. Andrew Thomas did get a little bit better, but I don't know what's up with Will Hernandez. And you've dealt with some injuries. Defensively, why did we get such a precipitous pullback from the successes that we had last year, Leonard Williams notwithstanding? Where are all the playmakers? They had really good secondary players from Adoree Jackson and Bradbury, who we brought in. Why has there been such a regression? So look at it, identify it, and if there is a change to be made, make it, and be confident about making that. But it can't be a wholesale, we just got to blow this thing up again, because you start the cycle all over again. And we know how that's treated this team over the last 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, I just think that the Giant fan wants to get off this merry-go-round, because this one has just been, it's like a haunted house, really. Tiki, thank you.
Thank you, Tiki.
Always.
Looking forward to listening to you guys on Tiki and Tierney. Joins us every single week on Wednesdays.